Welcome. We are Rihanna and Masa, classical pianists and owners of the Piano Boat. The time has finally come for us to answer your questions. We are so very sorry it has taken us until August. There was a short video in January, which I did on my own, which was just asking you for questions, and you duly responded, and we have a good range of queries and wonderments to address today. But thank you so much for your patience, and not one person has said, what has happened to that Q&A? Maybe that means you're not interested. But anyway, we are here today to answer the questions that you asked back in January. So I think we're going to start off with a few indoors, and then we're going to make the most of the sunshine.
Yes, it's a nice weather today, and as much as I love the setup I have from my birthday that I got myself, this lovely bit of kit, but it is nice outside. It's a bit warm, but the other thing that we originally thought to do was to investigate this Denham Deep Lock, where they changed the gate, and we haven't been since. And that was something we were thinking about. So we decided to combine the two and do a short walk. Well, it's actually not that short, but a walk.
And there's an ice cream shop. Actually, it's a tea
Fran's
garden.
Tea Garden.
And they have ice cream.
Yes. So that's the plan. But let's kick off with the first question. We've sort of categorized into, this is sort of a general one, and we're going to start with that, and then a few of the piano or music related ones, and then the boaty ones we can do as we go. So the first one, Mike McCartney asks, I'd love to know more about the two of you, your philosophies about music, favorite musicians, how you became musicians, that sort of stuff, perhaps with some samples of music. We do, all the music that we play, the piano music, the Piano Boat, is my performance. But we also do the online concerts as well, if you are interested in that sort of thing. It's all on the website. But this is quite a big question in a way, so it will probably take a few videos to answer fully. But in a way, our mission was indeed to create this intimate space, hence our strapline, the world's most intimate concert hall, where we can really meet the guests and talk to you and really get to you, for you to get to know us and for us to get to know you. It was that sort of environment, rather than when I play in a 4,000 seater. There's nothing, it's just the lighting is blinding, and I don't really see it, just rows of heads, seated guests, and afterwards, yes, there's a limited amount of interaction with anyone who comes to the green room afterwards. But the whole concept here is very different, and that's what we tried to create. And the digital media at the moment certainly is helping as well. So we do have as I said, the monthly online concerts, but not only that, I do the pre-concert talks where I do demonstrate the music that's going to be performed. And since June, we've also started a sort of a live stream Q&A, sort of an interview, musical demonstration, mixed bag sort of thing, between the concerts, where we use at the moment we use the Zoom platform where we can literally interact with our audiences. So that's something that's really been going on. But I think if we were to answer some of the questions, what was it? Philosophies about music, Rihanna.
Oh gosh, that's a funny one.
Yes, but we don't want to spend too long.
Well, you go
sorry,
then.
Yeah. You go first, whilst I quickly think about it.
Philosophies about music. Because I don't do very much performing, I have a degree in music. It was very academic, a lot of reading and writing. But I would say my philosophies towards music are centered more around teaching, because I do a lot of that. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about how to approach teaching my students, how to improve on the way that I was taught myself, because I don't think it was perhaps the best. But that's maybe for another video. But I would say my music philosophies are more to do with teaching than sort of performing or listening or that kind of thing.
So more teaching philosophies, maybe. It is a broad topic, really. It has to be communication. I'm not very good with verbal communication or eye contact and that kind of thing. But I think musical communication is where I feel most comfortable. Some artists do like to just perform or play in their own practice rooms and possibly communicate with the spirit of the composer. I don't know. But I have heard some very famous pianists talk about this sort of thing. So they like to just be indoors and mind their own business. But I feel we need audiences. It's part and parcel. It is a message that each music conveys. And I think that element is certainly very strong in my philosophy. If that answers the question at all. It's a bit vague, but I think it is a vague topic altogether. Favorite musicians? Should we do it in the same order?
Yeah, okay. Favorite musicians, again, that's a tricky one. It's a funny thing. It's a general consensus with other teachers and musicians that we know. It's not actually a hobby to sit and listen to music because that's our job. So I would say that I don't listen to a lot of classical music or particular musicians. I actually, when I'm in the car, I listen to Radio 4 very often. But favourite musicians, I mean, it's probably similar to what Masa's going to say, actually. It's sort of the classics like Horowitz and Ashkenazi and those sort of more old school performers, I would say. Have I stolen your answer?
I would have to say the favorite musicians, yes. It is the old school. It's a strange thing to say. I wouldn't mind if people said, oh, we prefer the old school to yours, or as in mine as well, because there's a difference in that generation where I just feel there was more freedom. Since the record began, the LPs or whatever, when that began, and there's a famous story, I'll be very quick, but a very famous story about a legendary pianist who, some young recording engineer wanted to capture the performance. So he produced this recording device and he recorded this legendary pianist's performance, and then he started working on editing, which is very common now. I don't mind admitting it takes 3 days for my CD for just 80 minutes of recording. It took 3 days of recording for me, and that's just the way it is now. So this young emerging recording engineer edited everything very carefully and got rid of all the scuffs and everything, and this pianist listened to it and said, this is not my performance. I want it exactly how it was. So he had to put it all back for the recording to be released. But since the recording, accuracy is becoming more and more important, and we hear it on radio, television, or any number of downloads nowadays, and people expect accuracy now, and I do think it is restrictive. It's a strange thing to say. I always tell my students, don't worry about fluffs and mistakes. It's just part and parcel of in fact, if anything, the charm of the live music, live performance. But in those days, the recordings we have from the legendary pianists, they didn't care about slips and all that. They just went freely with what they felt the music to be the most important. But I just feel that now, even including myself, there is a certain element of restriction. Sometimes I go for it and I don't mind. I do tend to miss more than possibly the next pianist. I don't know. But I think it is a charm, and there's a limit, of course, otherwise we'd be straying from the original music. But in that context, the old school, certainly Horowitz had a very unique style, Rubinstein, these generation of pianists really didn't care about that sort of restriction. I just felt they were freer in what they wanted to do. So I think I do enjoy listening to the performances from back then. As Rihanna said, I think there's an element of studying for me, analysing and possibly getting some inspiration and ideas. I can't just lie back and listen to particularly piano music without that occupational hazard maybe. But in that context, the favourite musicians, I'd still have to say, are the old school in that sense. Okay, moving swiftly on to how you became a musician.
It was sort of not entirely planned, I suppose. When I was going through school, I had various ideas about what I wanted to do, which included being a vet or an architect, although I can't draw, so that was short-lived. And I just always enjoyed music, and I sort of I played the piano, I played the violin, I loved taking part in sort of orchestral activities. But it wasn't really until I had to decide that I decided to study music. And I don't know what I thought was going to come out of my music degree. I think I initially wanted to perform, and then I decided that was too stressful and I didn't want to do that at all, but I was still going to study music. And it was really by chance that I ended up teaching, because a couple of teenagers at my school wanted me to teach them piano. So I did, and then I did a piano teaching course, and now I have 40 students. So that's really become my main occupation. So it was sort of an organic growth to being a piano teacher, which I now really enjoy. And I don't know if that certainly wasn't my original plan, because when I was younger, I thought I'll never be a teacher. I definitely don't want to teach. But actually it's quite good fun.
Organic is an interesting word, because I think, again, I will borrow that or use that as well. But it was very organic for me to be a performer in my case, because I started when I was 5, and I wasn't good with sports. Certainly, I was quite rubbish with a lot of things, but the piano playing did seem to go down very well. And by the age of 10, I did get my grade 8 distinction. So it was a natural
I
path.
did not.
Natural path, I think. I did a performance at the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. And it was just a natural path. And before I realized, I was really immersed, and I went to a music conservatoire and the sixth form as well. So by then, it was sort of destined to be, I think. But I think particularly, this is one of the things that we talked about in the June live stream about my experiences, my teachers and things. But certainly when I started off the piano playing at 5, there was an element of finger shape. And if you're familiar with that sort of piano teaching aspect of it, proper finger shape, and I wasn't told why. It all felt a bit restrictive. And then the family moved to the UK when I was about 6 or 7. And then the teacher here wasn't worried about that sort of technical aspect. It was all about make music, have fun. And that really did promote that element in me. So I think the performance is stressful, to be honest. There's no question about that. It is a stressful thing. You know it's going to come. You know you have to give it your best. You know you have to be prepared. And one never feels prepared enough, really. But so hence the stress maybe there. And the preparation until the pieces are ready, it's a stress. I've got a concert online here at the end of this month, and the repertoire is quite challenging. I haven't learned it by memory yet. I can't get my fingers around some sections. They still need work, and that's not a very comfortable situation to be in, although I do know that it will happen as long as I maintain my practice. But still, it is a stressful thing. But it's a bit of a cliche, but of course there is the joy in the performance. So I think it was just a natural path for me, really. So that's hopefully that answers a little bit. But if you would like to know more, do keep in touch and keep in touch with our outputs and things, and hopefully they will answer more and illustrate what we are or who we are. So a few of the piano-related questions. Well, here's one. Frank Tadley asks, how often do you have to tune the piano? Well, in an ideal world, I'd say before every concert. But I think realistically, the big one is the regulation and all the voicing. The hammers, the felt hammers get hard after being hit at the steel strings, the piano strings, many times. So they need to be softened, and that big job once a year. Otherwise, we do try to get the tuning done 2 more times over the course of the year. But it's very hot today, and as much as we have aircon and the central heating and everything, we do sort of have to allow a bit of fluctuation. And of course, then the steel strings do expand and shrink. The wood as well, it expands with more humidity, and it does shrink when it's dry. So there's nothing we can really do, but it will slip a little bit. But because the instrument's still new, it's a lot better. The pin block is a lot firmer and strong than it can be with an old instrument. Then we have, where are we? Michael Thomas and Steve Taylor.
Just playing that.
They have 2 questions, similar questions. I think we thought to answer at the same time. Michael asks, have you asked Steinway about built-in humidification systems they could recommend being installed on the Model A. And Steve asks, I have a question about piano maintenance. Given that most grand pianos are installed in immobile structures, well, that's the first point, and B, not surrounded by water. I'm curious how you're finding maintenance of yours with the constant marine motion and possibly humid environment, depending on the season. Does it keep tuning action better or worse than its stationary counterparts? Thanks. So these are the two questions. Essentially, the first question to answer is, Michael's answer is that no, they actually don't recommend anything. If you look at the website, they actually recommend to keep the room climate as regulated as possible, rather than, there are things like the damp chasers and like piano savers, and there are various things either to keep the humidity away or to make sure that the humidity level is maintained. But we did decide it's quite a big space in a way to maintain, but we did decide it is better to try, because we do have the air conditioning, we have dehumidifiers, we have humidifiers, we also have the central heating as well. So we decided to actually try and maintain the climate. In the winter, of course, we don't always have the diesel central heating boiler on. We just get an electric radiator just for this room. So we're shivering in the cold in the back of the boat, and the piano is nice and warm. That's how it worked out at the moment. But in terms of the motion and things, it doesn't actually move much at all. I'm almost disappointed, although it's probably good for the piano. When you get on a narrow boat, you can instantly tell when someone steps on board because it rocks quite a bit. Wide beams, you can't tell. There's hardly any motion at all. The only time we have to be careful is when I'm cruising and I'm approaching a lock or something. Obviously, we don't want to bang into the quay side or any of the structures around the canal. So these are the only things. But we have fenders in various places which softens the impact. So really, there's hardly any motion at all under normal circumstances. And certainly in terms of the humidity, if anything, in the winter, certainly it does still get very dry. And we're finding in the summer months, no difference really. We have one of these sensors outdoors as well. It's pretty much the same as any normal house, really. I mean, I remember one of the piano tuners that I spoke to said he had the horror experience of going to someone's house to tune the piano, and it was a rainy day, and the owner had the French windows fully open, and the room was so damp. So I think in the context of being careful of the humidity and the temperature, there's really no difference at all. We haven't particularly felt, just because we're floating on water, that things are more humid. That's not something that we experience. No. So it's much the same as a house, really, if that answers the question. And then we have Sith Lord 1 SW
She's
fan.
chewing my buttons.
SW, I'd imagine, is Star Wars. Yes, and the question is, Rihanna, what's your and Masa's favourite piece to play and why?
Well, since this is directed at me, I think I will answer, except the cat is eating my buttons and my earrings.
Shall I take the cat? Because...
Okay, favourite piece to play. I used to like playing Prokofiev piano music, actually. And I was teaching a lesson yesterday, and one of my students was doing a grade 5 piece that is by Prokofiev, and I thought, I really must learn that second piano sonata that I played a few years ago. So I brought the book with me to do a bit of practice in my free time this week. So I always enjoyed that, although after a few kind of pieces, so I did first piano concerto as well, and I found that they sort of get a bit similar to each other after a while. All the Prokofiev pieces sort of merge into one mass of Prokofiev, and I found that they have more musical effect than musical meaning. So they're quite fun and entertaining, but in the long run, not all that satisfying. So I sort of had a fun learning those for a bit and then went off them. So I think that's, yeah, my musical experience in recent terms is somewhat limited because I just haven't had enough hours in the day to really immerse myself in practicing. Hello.
We've been expecting... Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to your answer at all there. But in an ideal world, I have to say favorite music, Star Wars music. Yay! There is a video of me playing some short snippets dressed as Darth Vader.
Oh, we'll put that in. We should put that in the video. I don't think it's on Facebook, so we'll stick it in here.
If you haven't come across it, it's a few videos back, I think.
Oh, the recent one, not the initial one you did. You did one like a long time ago.
Yes. Anyway, there's a lot of me dressed as Darth Vader in full gloves. Very difficult to play. But otherwise, it's a bit of a cliche, but I have to say the favorite music is the one that I'm working on at the moment. It grows on me. I'm working on Chopin's Piano Sonata No. 2 at the moment. Very dramatic. And then there's the classic Chopin moments as well, full of contrast. It's quite an incredible work. And of course, ultimately, I'd have to say Rachmaninoff. I mean, the boat's name is called Rachmaninoff. His music, his contemporaries, he's a 20th century composer, died in 1943, so quite recent in that context. But while his contemporaries were already experimenting with much more, I wouldn't say obscure, but very experimental harmonies, and he still stuck to the more conventional melody writing and harmonies, and still, I feel, came up with something quite unique. And he was a very modest man, as far as we could tell from all the records. He always asked his colleagues and friends, do you think this works? Does this work? And asking pianists as well, does this work? And he did revise an awful lot of his own compositions, which doesn't help because I'm trying to record all of his piano solo works, and it has to include the revisions as well. So certainly Rachmaninoff's music would have to be my ultimate favourite. Right. One more?
Okay.
Or maybe we can get out. Is it cabin fever?
I know, enjoy the sunshine. It's actually going to be really hot today, so we need to go before it gets too hot.
Very true. All right, see you in a bit.
Yes.
Bye.
Well, we realised that this video is going to become quite long, so we've decided to divide it into two parts. You will find out in the second video why we are here. It is practically dinner time now, so please stay with us for part 2 next time. Thank you for watching.